Dale, sorry, mate, you weren't first this time.
No problem.
Hi, everyone. Let me have a look, see who we've got. I've obviously got Dale because I recognise him as soon as he comes up. We've got Debbie, Davey, Elvis, Deborah Hesling. Good to see you again. We've got Rob, we've got Caroline, we've got Sylvie and Johannes. Hi, Johannes. I don't think we've ever met. Andrew, we've got Claire Miller, we've got Stella, now empowerment coach. Yo! We've got Jeff Fairfield, we've got Linda Weatherly, we've got Grant out in Spain, and we've got David. We've still got some other people joining us right at this moment in time. Great to see you all again. Since, Claire, you came up on the screen, you put a question up in the group. That's the answer. The laws of success. Roger, just seen Roger join us. So the laws of success, I just got this in today, was the original book that Napoleon Hill wrote. I'm just seeing somebody else join us. Who's that? Sandra, and we got Joe. Joe, I believe, out in Nashville. I love Nashville. I had such a fantastic time. I could go and live in Nashville any day. Though it wasn't an experience that I was expecting, but I still loved it. So, Laws of Success was the original, and I've just seen Phil join us here from Aberdeen. Sorry, Edinburgh. Just kidding you, Phil. Was it Fisk? I can't remember. This was the original series of books that Napoleon Hill wrote, which was sold door to door. And then they were condensed, I think, in 1937 into what we now know as Think and Grow Rich. So that answer, Claire, that's the answer to that question. I just got that in from Amazon today. As I said, I bought a very dear friend of mine the original hardback covers, but when I look for those now, they're going for absolutely bonkers money. So, but they've been reprinted in that book there, and then. There was another question in the group, Real NLP and Huna, Real World NLP and Huna community about whether Napoleon Hill was actually a con man or whatever. I have no idea. Though one of my experiences is that pretty much anybody who's been a major contributor to the world of personal development and personal transformation has at one point in time been accused of being a con man. Tony Robbins, Richard Bandler, or Zig Ziglar, all of these kind of people, con man, Deepak Chopra, whatever. I don't actually think that's really that important. What I think is important is the information that they share valuable or not. That's my most important criteria. I'm surrounded here with 3,000 books, and many of those people would have been called charlatans and con men and whatever, whether it be Dr. John Dee or whether it be Cagliostro or any of those kind of people. And then, I read the book, and do I get personal value out of it? The answer to that question is yes. Here we go. Is the original one of the original classics, Think and Grow Rich. I did research this today, and it sold 18 million copies. And it's been made into a movie. Very, very good friend of mine and client of mine, Derek Mills, is in the new movie Think and Grow Rich. Hi, Frank. How are you? And it's a fantastic movie. I mean, Derek invited me to see the premiere down in the Troxy in Southeast London. And it brought tears to my eyes. Honestly, it did. So you might see some adverts for Think and Grow Rich, because maybe social media is picking up that you're interested in Think and Grow Rich, and therefore you've seen the advert. I see adverts for all kinds of things, and all I've done is thought about it, and then suddenly it's appeared on my Facebook page. And I go wow, what is that? And people go, David, you're such a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I think all of that is total rubbish. Anyway, getting back to Think and Grow Rich, I just wanted to deal with those things up front, because I saw it going out in the group. One was Claire, question, but then I did see somebody going about con artist, etc. And I just wanted to answer that up front, because those kind of things, who cares whether he was or not? Those kind of comments can kind of distract us from our own personal development and personal growth, etc. So Think and Grow Rich 9, the mastermind. Not actually what we were thinking this chapter was going to be about. I think this chapter is actually a bit of a setup for a later chapter on the sixth sense. But there's some interesting things in here, which I want to talk about. And they're partly review, partly setting up things in the future. So Napoleon Hill defines power as being organized and intelligently directed knowledge. I quite like that. Organized and intelligently directed knowledge. It reminds me of Tony Robbins' definition of personal power, which is in his book Unlimited Power, where he defines a person's personal power as being the ability to take action. Which, sounds quite simple, but, if you think about what we've talked about before with cause and effect, when somebody's at effect, they make themselves completely unable to take action. When they put themselves on the cause side of the equation, there is always something they can do to change what they're doing. And Tony Robbins was very highly influenced by Napoleon Hill. Probably the person who is most influenced in the personal development world by Napoleon Hill was Bob Proctor, who unfortunately died last year, I think it was. And he literally made Think and Grow Rich is almost like his personal development Bible, and created great teachings and assisted many people, which then went on to lead to The Secret, which I think I've already told you my views about the book The Secret and the movie about The Secret. Missed a number of significant points. So then we've got power is organized and intelligently directed knowledge. So then Napoleon Hill goes on to say, okay, what are the three sources of knowledge? The first, which we talked about several weekends ago or several weeks ago, was infinite intelligence. And if you remember, I pulled up the flip chart here. Infinite intelligence comes from your higher self. So your higher self being the all-knowing, the true you, the you that goes beyond time and space, the you that goes beyond lifetimes, completely infinite, knows everything in the universe. Though you do.
Echo, is your Bluetooth on?
My Bluetooth is on, yes.
Now connected to.
Does everybody hear me okay? Okay, that was obviously just a personal comment. Is my Bluetooth on? Get your Bluetooth on. That's a good line for a new song. So that's your higher self. So that's infinite intelligence. Tap into your higher self, and you can get the answers to every single question you might have in the universe, though you do need to ask, and you need to know how to ask. That's something we cover a lot in HUNA and the Personal Empowerment Breakthrough Intensive, which we've just actually lined up for being in Malta again this year. Then the second one, source of knowledge, experience. Now that is unconscious mind. Infinite intelligence, higher self, experience, unconscious mind. As in the things that you've learnt via the process of experience, not thinking. Thinking is conscious mind. So, it's a bit like I was doing a video the other day, and I went, would you want to get in a car with somebody who learned how to drive a car? Barbara, I can see you here. You'll get this. Would you want to get in a car with somebody who learned how to drive a car consciously through reading a book? Or actually the fact that they've got in a car and then learn that in actual fact that the theory of driving a car and the practices of driving a car are very, very different. I think we know the answer to that particular question. Yeah. So the second source of knowledge is experience, which can only come from not thinking, but by going out and doing. Which then leads to the third source of knowledge, which is experiment. As in, you might not know anybody who's done it before. There might not be a book about it. Now, for a lot of people at that point in time, they stop. But what Napoleon Hill's talking about is there are certain people, a minority of people, even though there's no book about it, even though there's nobody that they can go and talk to about it, they go and do it anyway, because nobody's done it before. These are rare people. Where you go and do it. See, here's the thing you've got to be okay with the third one is because you don't know and nobody knows, there's no way in advance you're going to know whether it's going to work or not. So there's only one way of finding out whether it's going to work, and that is actually going and doing it. So, like we said in previous sessions, you've got to be okay with failing. You've got to be okay with what we say in Mansfield, dying on your ass. Potentially, publicly, in a way where everybody sees that you went for something and you didn't get it right. And then, though, taking the feedback from that and going, you know, what we said in a previous session about recovery strategy. How did I create this not working? What can I learn from this? What do I need to do differently next time to make it actually succeed next time? And you might not, but also being totally okay with that. Now, right at the end of the chapter, Napoleon Hill introduces the idea of the mastermind. And he says that there's two aspects to the mastermind. The physical aspect of the mastermind, which he puts down to purely financial, as in being around people physically that can support you financially. But then he says actually the most important aspect of the mastermind is the psychic aspect of the mastermind, where he says that like two or more minds get together and he doesn't use this term, this is my term, there's a synergy between these minds on an energetic, he does use that term, on an energetic and on a psychic level, which creates a mind which is greater than any of the individual minds that are part of that mastermind. This, from my studies of quantum physics, particularly Rupert Sheldrake, reminds me of what Sheldrake postulated was the idea of the morphogenic field, there being a level of consciousness where every single mind in the universe was one. And then when you access that particular field of pure information, then you can tap into the secrets, the intelligence, the knowledge of the entire universe. Rupert Sheldrake's definition of the morphogenetic field, Carl Jung's definition of the collective unconscious, the Huna definition of Al-Makua, the higher self, all sound the same to me. And I think at that level they are the same thing. So, and here's the thing with then Napoleon Hill being, criticized as being a con man. In a later chapter, when we get to the Sixth Sense, and he starts to talk about the cabinet of invisible minds, then we start to realize that what Napoleon Hill was talking about with these conversations he was having with these people actually weren't physical. And he never said they were physical. They were in his mind. He imagined speaking to Carnegie. So, there's these things as far as there's no evidence that Napoleon Hill ever met Carnegie. Who knows whether he did or not, or Ford. But when we get to that chapter, and I'm gonna line this up now, is that many of the people that Napoleon Hill had in his cabinet of invisible mentors, or whatever he called it, I haven't written down the title, weren't alive when Napoleon Hill was alive. That doesn't mean that we can't access their knowledge and their intelligence. This is and it has to write in allegory, because people would think even today, if he talked about that, you'd be put on drugs or locked up. So if you said, well, I had this conversation with Ford, or whatever it may be, and it was real, you'd be diagnosed with schizophrenia, or whatever it was. But that's what Napoleon Hill was actually doing. And it's something that we actually teach in our higher levels of Huna. So he set that up in this chapter for a later chapter on the Sixth Sense, where we started to get into it in a little bit more detail, though it is still very metaphorical, allegorical. Not as much as the next chapter, though, which is what we're going to do next week, which is, I don't know, Phil, you're waiting for this one. Chapter 11, The Mystery of Sex Transmutation. Actually, strangely, a chapter which I've got a lot of knowledge and experience about, as to what that chapter is actually about. So I've heard so many people, when they go through Think and Grow Rich, just skip that chapter. No, we're not skipping that chapter, because it's a vitally important chapter, not only for men, but also for women. The kind of what would I say? the multiple purposes and meanings and uses of what we might describe as being sexual energy. That's next week. I expect lots of people to book in next week. But that's my take on this chapter, the mastermind. I think it's a bit of a recap of previous chapters, a setup for future chapters. A good chapter, but a pretty lightweight compared to some of the others. Okay. Pour myself some more tea and see if there's any questions. Hi, Sally, you're still there?
Mute. Okay, Roger, can you ask your question, please?
Roger, can't hear you, mate. I think that must be you. Now I can.
Sorry, I've lost the picture, but as long as you can hear me. Simple. Sorry, very simple question. Does it follow that experiment, the third source of knowledge, maps to the conscious mind on the rather cavalier assumption that if infinite intelligence is higher self and experience is unconscious mind, does that follow, or am I adding 2 and 2 making 5?
It's a good question. It's not what I've thought about, which is why I love doing these, because I get questions that I've not asked myself. I think it does relate to the conscious mind, but the conscious mind's willing to do something which might not work first, second, third, or fourth time. So then, by experimenting, by doing things you've never done before, therefore experience, which is unconscious mind, then you gain new knowledge for you and potentially new knowledge for the world, if it truly is something that somebody's never done before. I think the important thing from the conscious mind point of view is conscious-unconscious integration. One first step in this, and I've never thought of this before, so great question, Roger. One, conscious mind being willing to let go of having to get it right first time. Second part of that, consciously integrating the learnings that came from the experience of potentially not getting it right first time, second time, third time, potentially, light bulb 10,000 times, and being okay with that. I mean, I know I mentioned it in a previous session, where Edison went to create a light bulb and he blew his laboratory up. I don't know if this story is true or not, but it's a good story anyway. And nearly killed himself and a friend, and grabs himself out of the rubble and immediately gets out his notebook and starts taking notes. And his friend says, "What are you taking notes on?" He said, it failed. You nearly killed us. And Edison said, "Well, yeah, I didn't manage to create a light bulb, but if I ever want to create an explosion, I want to make notes as to how I did it." Which is true experimenting. Something I did a lot when I was a kid with my friend Simon Fricker, because we'd spend every summer basically making bombs. Something I have to be careful about saying these days, but we made TNT, we made nitroglycerin, we made nitrocellulose, we did everything, and I still say to Simon today, we went to secondary school together, so I've known him since I was 11, so I've known him for like 48 years, and I still say to him today, Simon, it's amazing that we're still here, let alone that we've still got all of our fingers from the stuff that we got up to, but we just experimented, and I think but it's like experimenting, which is unconscious, conscious mind being willing to let go of it having to work, and then conscious mind comes in and goes, okay, so consciously, what did I learn from that experiment? Which is a bit like the stuff I was talking about a couple of either last week or a week or so ago about recovery strategy of setting a goal and not achieving it first time. Now when I think about it, what me and Simon were doing, we weren't necessarily experimenting, we were playing. And I think when people go through this overrated experience that we call growing up, we stop playing. And we stop going, I wonder what would happen if I did this. Normally with me and Simon, it was like, but we learned a lot about chemistry and making bombs. Anyway, don't quote me on that. Does that answer your question, Roger?
Perfect. Thanks very much, David.
Cheers, mate.
Really perfect.
No other questions at this point, David?
All right, okay.
I have one for the group though. How many of them are playing with their NLP skill set? Frank's waving.
No, we've got a couple of questions there. We've got a couple of people waving. I'm just looking at my screen. We've got Sandra was waving.
Yeah, I think that was to my question about how many of them play with their NLP skill set.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. And yeah, Jerry was waving and Frank was waving. I don't know if that was an answer to your questions. Here's the thing, just on the NLP basis. When I first learned NLP, this is before I did my practitioner training. This is when I was doing my listening to the tapes from Tad James. I just thought it was so amazing. Just played with it all the time, just to see what would happen. Now I go like, okay, was that totally ecological? I guess I hadn't really learned the full scope of ecology at that point in time. But, I'd be traveling in and out of central London on the tube. And I would go, right, let's see how many people I can get rapport with. In the underground carriage. And I always remember like going, okay, that worked quite well. Checking the time, looking at my watch, and about 6 people in the carriage looked at their watch at the same time, except 3 of them were wearing one. 2 of them followed me home, which is when I learned that really you only want to build rapport with people that you want to have rapport with. But then, you know, experimenting, building rapport with my grandma Shepherd when she was in a coma. I'd not even done practitioner at this point in time, and I thought, what do I do to help her? Because she was dying. She died the next day, and I'm in a situation where I didn't know what to do, but I'd learned rapport. So I thought, well, her unconscious mind's probably still there. So let's build rapport with her unconscious mind. How am I going to do that? Well, listen to the tapes, crossover matching, crossover mirroring. So I built rapport by raising my finger and lowering my finger with the rate of her breathing. And I got rapport with her unconscious mind to the point where I actually had a conversation with her before she died. Physically, you know, Sally will testify to this. The number of times when we just learnt this, and we were present at a number of road traffic incidents where people were unconscious, and we used our NLP and hypnosis skills to assist the person before the police and the ambulance arrived. Did we know what we were doing? No, not really. Were we experimenting? Yeah. Was the result potentially better than if we'd done nothing? Yeah. And every single time, the result was actually quite profound. So I think the whole thing about learning through experimentation, it's the way that we learned when we were a kid. You didn't know how to walk. You experimented. I can pretty much, even though I wasn't there, I can pretty much guarantee that the first time you experimented with that, it didn't go well. Did you get out a big stick and beat yourself over the head going, I'll never walk? No. What you did was you dusted yourself down, probably had a little bit of a laugh about it, and then you gave it another go. So that's the third source of knowledge, and you know, and that's one of the most powerful ways of learning. But I see so many people not doing it these days, you know, with their NLP, with their timeline therapy, with their mental emotional release, with their hypnosis, you know. And, you know, we just had situations where there was somebody who'd been run over in the middle of the road, unconscious, with, you know, physical injuries. Ambulance is not there. Is this something that you can do to assist? And the answer to that is yes. So I just got hypnosis. So we just ran out into the middle of the road and didn't need to induce a trance. The car did that. We just gave them suggestions, and the results were amazing. So experiment with this stuff, guys. That's a really important thing. Yeah. So, good question, Sally.
Okay,
Any-
next we do have a question from Carol Evans, if you can ask your question.
Hi there, David.
How are you?
Very well, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. My question is, if your higher self is the source of all knowledge, which I believe, how do we know that we're getting a higher self answer and not just making it up? Because I remember when I was doing some of the stuff with you and the pendulum, you could actually make the pendulum do what you wanted it to do, and you could also go with it and get the pendulum to give you a true answer. But it was quite hard to separate the two.
Yeah. So a couple of things with that. One is you could actually make the pendulum give you a different answer, though it was quite hard. Yep. Conscious mind. Though I've had people who were also doing the pendulum, and they also, I'm going to use the word deliberately, tried to get the pendulum to go a different way, and it wouldn't. Making it up takes time. Knowing is instant. Yeah. Then I think, and we talked about this in a previous session with the 3 minds. It is your unconscious mind can, will, and does make mistakes. Always with a positive intention, and it can or does make mistakes. Your higher self never makes mistakes because your higher self is perfect. Then, if you ask your higher self a question, which is just a simple closed question, it will always say yes. So, as an example, if I said to my higher self, should I move to Scotland? It's going to go, perfect. If I said to my higher self, would moving to Scotland be in alignment with my true spiritual purpose, then it will either say yes or no. Yeah, but do you see how the question is subtly different? Phil's now relieved that I'm not moving to Edinburgh. But if you just do a simple question, this is something we used to have all the time in Hawaii when doing trainings in Hawaii. I've asked my higher self, should I move to Hawaii? And it said yes. If you said to your higher self, should I move to Watford? It would say yes. That's nothing personal about Watford, by the way. It could be anywhere. It will just say, yeah, perfect. But then if you asked, would it be in alignment with my true spiritual purpose to move to Hawaii? It will say either yes or no. But it will always say it immediately. There won't be a time delay. So there's no thinking about it. Does that answer your question, Carol?
It does. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions before we?
No, nothing coming up.
Okie dokie.
Very quiet group this week.
Yeah, which either means that what I've been talking about made absolutely no sense whatsoever, or made total sense. Let's go with the latter. I'm sure there'll be way more questions next week when we talk about the mystery of sex transmutation. I think I might need to book out quite a lot of time for that one. Useful session. Phil, that was not a thumbs up, that was a finger. Is that a so yeah, thanks for joining us. I see we've got quite a number of people joining the group this week, which is great. This session is being recorded, so I will get on with editing that either later tonight or tomorrow, and get it uploaded so that you can re-watch it. The people that aren't here can watch it again. I know it's holiday times here, and it's also holiday times in the US too. So probably the reason why there's lower numbers. Please invite any other people to the group that you believe would value from it, and we'll see you again next week.
Dave, just quickly, I think Linda's got a question.
Okay, Liz,
It's a small question.
Just a small question.
Okay.
I've always been intrigued by the fact that I cannot remember learning to swim. So I'm thinking of what you just said about conscious mind. I mean, I was in a swimming pool so young, but I sometimes, when people say, you know, I need to learn how to swim and I can't, I said, you're asking the one person who cannot remember learning to swim, because I could swim by the time I was 3.
Right.
So a bit like you take a baby in the water and I then just swam. So as far as I know, but I really have no conscious memory of learning to swim. So I'm thinking it's around about this, you know, conscious and just do it. That was my little small question.
Yeah, so if you learned to swim when you were 3,
I could
The re-
swim by 3.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a reason why you don't have a conscious recollection of that, is because you don't have a conscious mind.
Ah,
Because you don't get one till you're around about 5, 6, 7 years old.
great. I've always wondered why I can't remember it.
The memory's still there in your unconscious mind, though,
Mm,
which, you know, in trance, etc., you could actually access that.
yeah.
I mean, a really interesting one is that my mum got interested in what I was doing, and she went to the library, which gives you an idea about how long ago it was, when there were still libraries. And she said, I got out a book about hypnosis. And I'm thinking, oh, great. Here we go. And she said there was a chapter on phobias. So my mum had a phobia of water, of swimming.
Mm.
And she said, it said in this chapter that phobias were caused by a traumatic experience that you had when you were really young. And I was like, right. She said, but I've got a phobia of water and I can't remember anything traumatic happening when I was a kid. The only thing I can remember is I was out swimming with some friends of mine in a Lido, you know, like the open air pools that they had in those days. And my friends realized I'd disappeared, and then they saw me lying on the bottom of the pool.
Ah,
So the lifeguard dragged me out and gave me artificial respiration, and brought me back around again. But she said, other than that, I can't think of anything that's traumatic.
yes, quite. Very
Now,
true.
this had nothing to do with me. The next week I spoke to my mum. She said that she'd booked swimming lessons.
Yeah.
And I went, well, I thought you got a fear of water and a fear of swimming. She said it seems to have disappeared.
Good.
So essentially your unconscious mind had accessed the first event, which she wasn't consciously aware of. She'd gone like, that wasn't that traumatic. And even though she didn't know anything about timeline therapy or hypnosis or anything like that, the phobia disappeared. So, so yeah, all the memories are there, but we might not have access to them consciously because we didn't have a conscious mind. So we didn't have conscious unconscious integration.
Great. That was the answer I needed to, as it's always been a curiosity to me.
Yeah, that'd be, and you know, if you were to put yourself in trance and ask your unconscious mind, what was the event where you learned to swim?
Mm.
It will bring it up for you.
Yeah, I mean, I swim like a fish. I've always swum and well. So it was the interesting part was why I can't remember, and I can't help other people that can't swim because I don't know what it feels like not to. I'm sure I can, but it comes up every time somebody says they can't swim.
Yeah, I mean, it's like my nephew Isaac, when he was about 4 or something, asked me to teach him how to tie his shoelaces.
Mm.
And I couldn't. And at that particular point in time, I couldn't even tie my own. I started thinking about it, which, you know, when you tie your shoelaces, you don't even think about it. When you think about swimming, you don't think about it. When you think about riding a horse,
Don't think about it.
you don't think about it.
Yeah.
And if you did, you'd probably fall off.
Yes,
So don't.
I won't. I don't bounce like I used to. Lovely. Thank you for that. That's answered a question.
That's all right.
Okay, David Dale's got a question.
Who's that?
Dale.
Dale.
And it's a relevant question, Dale. It's a good question.
It's not a serious question. I was just having a laugh.
I know, but I think it's very relevant. So
I just said, would it help to bring our partners to next week's session?
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm going to drop a load of heavy duty stuff next week because it's a subject that I know a lot about. Yeah, it'll be I've just got this prediction. It's going to be a lengthy session. And if the previous sessions haven't taken the top of your head off, this one will.
Good.
So Dale answered the question and Linda answered it.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. I've been to so many things around Think and Grow Rich where people have said, so what's chapter 11 about? And it's just been glossed over. And I actually do know what it's about. So I will be sharing that next week. Next Wednesday. And yeah, the relationship between sexual energy and financial success. Yeah, that'll be a good one. I'm laughing already. Okay, guys. I shall see you next week with your clothes on, please. Bye.